Welcome, everyone. My name is Lisa Glow. I'm the CEO at Central Arizona Shelter Services. I think Leslie is going to kind of kick us off with a brief introduction, and then I'll say a little bit more, but we're really grateful that you all are here. And over to you, Leslie.
Thank you, Lisa, and welcome everybody. We're just thrilled to have you with us today. I just want to take a moment to let you know that we will be taking questions during the town hall. So please put your questions in the chat as we're going along. And when Lisa is finished at the end, we'll be able to field those questions and she'll answer those for you. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce our fabulous CEO, Lisa Glow. Lisa is a graduate of the James E. Rogers College of Law at the University of Arizona. Early in her career, she practiced law with 2 international law firms, worked for Arizona Attorney General Grant Woods and former Arizona Governor Janet Napolitano as the director of the Governor's Office for Children, Youth, and Families. Lisa has a passion for serving people, and I know most of you know that already, and has led many statewide initiatives to tackle complex social policy issues. Lisa joined CASS as its CEO in 2017, becoming CASS's 3rd CEO in the organization's 40-year history. Lisa has since led the agency to unprecedented growth, and she's going to tell you more about it today. So thanks for joining us. Lisa.
Thank you so much, Leslie. Well, again, thank you for being here. We invited all of you because you are all VIPs, very important people to our work. And thank you for your support, but also thank you for what you do in your communities. You are all people who really care. I do want to recognize a few folks here. We have a couple, I think 3 CASS board members, Leah Christensen from Valleywise, Guy Mickelson, who is retired, but still working hard as ever on our board. And I believe Patty Schoenhart from Nationwide. If she's not on, she will be. I also see a former board member, Mo Stein. Thank you, Mo. And Mo continues to provide great leadership in the community. And then there's also someone really special on the call I'm going to acknowledge, and that would be my sister, Shelly Manansky. She and her husband, Mark, are on the call. Thank you for joining. They are passionate advocates in their community in Texas, and they volunteer at their church, and they do a lot for the homeless. So I'm really touched that you're here today, sister. Also, I want to recognize our campaign co-chairs. David Bixby's on the call, and I believe Lori Goldstein for our Capital campaign. I believe she's on the call. If not, I think she's going to be joining us. So without further ado, we're going to jump in, and I put my email and my phone, my cell phone up here so you know how to contact me, although most of you probably already know. Next slide, please. On everybody's mind is what's going on in downtown Phoenix in the so-called zone, which is where we have a large homeless encampment outside of where our 600-bed main shelter currently exists here in Phoenix. And this has been a real humanitarian crisis, this area. Last year, we had about 1,000 people that were living outdoors in the zone. We had over, I believe it was about 1,500 transient street deaths in Maricopa County. 425 of those were heat related. Most of those were outdoor street deaths. And we're continuing to see a dramatic rise in heat deaths in our community, particularly in this area. But I want to give you some good updates about what's going on in the zone. And I've a lot to share there, but I'll be brief so we can keep moving through this presentation. So many of you may be aware that the city of Phoenix was sued by the neighbors in the area, and that was this last year. And a judge ruled that this area must be cleaned out, meaning there will be no more camping out here, period. So Phoenix is in the process, working with CASS, the Human Services Campus, CBI, and many partners to help find places for folks who are currently living in the zone. And also then to clear out the areas, clean it. As you can see, here's one before and after picture. They're doing this block by block. So to clear out the areas, and once an area has been cleared out and cleaned, camping is no longer allowed there. So this is going to take still many more months. We don't know what the judge in the court is going to rule. There's another ruling coming up in terms of how quickly they want this to be accomplished. But we're partners in that work. We're part of the street outreach teams. And Most importantly, at our adult shelter, we have 600 beds for people, and we're keeping those full. Some nights we're at 635, and we just put mats on the floor if we don't have enough spaces for people, because we need to get folks off of the streets. That's the goal. Our adult shelter is located right in this vicinity. In addition to the 600 beds, people can stay indoors all day, 24/7. We offer a lot of day programming too. We scaled up to the 600 beds a year ago in June as part of being able to add more beds, because there was a zoning case that allowed that, but also as part of responding to the crisis. Some of you may have seen that last year, our governor, Katie Hobbs, declared a state of heat emergency in Arizona, and also is going to put some resources into 2 locations for cooling stations near the Capitol. There were apparently 2 street-related deaths on the Capitol property. I believe both individuals were homeless, and I think that really got the attention of our governor. She's also been very committed to putting more resources into the system. In addition to what's going on in this outdoor space with cleaning, there's going to be another location called a safe outdoor camping space that will be opening in September or October. That's just around the corner from this, where people will be allowed to camp, but it's in an enclosed property. It has a fence, it has shade, has an indoor area for restrooms. It will have 24/7 security. There'll be services, food will be delivered. And people who no longer want to stay on the streets, but are not ready to come all the way off the streets, will have the option of moving their campsite over there. So for folks who are not willing to leave the so-called zone, they can go to that location, and it's going to have probably about 250 spaces for people to camp. I'll say a little bit more about our adult shelter later, but let me keep clicking along here, because what I want to do today is give you some highlights of what's new at CASS. Next slide, please. And what are some of the areas you may not know about where we're focusing, because over the last 3 to 4 years, we've been expanding regionally and also doing more specialized services. So what we have here in this picture, our 2 staff who are holding the babies, they work at what's called the Norton and Ramsey Social Justice Empowerment Center. This is located in downtown Glendale, and it's a navigation center that we opened in December of 2020. And then what happened in 2021, the city of Glendale put out a large procurement opportunity, and we were awarded a large contract to be the city's master services homeless provider. What that means is we operate this navigation center, and we partner with many other nonprofit agencies, including Phoenix Rescue Mission, who does street outreach, Family Promise, who shelters families, pet agencies, and so on. This picture here represents a great success story. This mother with her 5 children had the same apartment in Glendale for many, many years. Her mother was the primary caregiver when she was working. Her mother fell ill, she lost her job, and they were essentially going to become street homeless. We found them, or they found us, because we run a 24/7 line in Glendale. They had just been evicted. They came to us. We were able to put them up in a hotel for a few nights, so they never had to sleep in their car. And we then negotiated, actually the guy without the hat, Dane, he negotiated with the landlord to get the family back into the same apartment. So it took maybe $600-700 in order to take care of the gap that they had, a couple nights in a hotel, and then they were back into their same apartment, and now everything is stabilized again. And I point this story out because this is more of what we need to do in our communities, is what I call more of the upstream prevention. Let's prevent people from becoming street homeless, because our numbers are rising dramatically in this community. A lot of it has to do with evictions. A lot of it has to do with rising rents, or someone down on their luck, like this mom of these 5 adorable children who just needed a small hand up. So that's Glendale. We're seeing a lot of families in Glendale. And this model that we're delivering there is something we're very proud of because we saw a decrease in Glendale in the unsheltered homeless count by 58% last year when they did their annual count. And that's kind of a big deal. We know it wasn't just this center, but we know this contributed to that. And it's all about the coordination of services. We think this is a replicable model for other cities as well. And we're just very proud of the work that's happening there. And that's one of our new programs. So let's go to the next slide and let me introduce to you John Merkel. So John was a former client. He's now a member at our single adult shelter. That's what SAS stands for. As I mentioned, we have 600 beds at this shelter, 24/7 services and day programming. It's been a heavy lift. I'll be candid with you, scaling up to 600 beds. And we don't have, you would think we'd have a lot more staff. We don't. We are managing, but we're working on raising additional dollars so we can hire more case managers. During the pandemic, we had more funding, as did most other providers, but we're back to pre-pandemic level funding from governments. Some foundations are no longer providing the increased support. So we have a great team. They're working really, really hard. John, who is a senior citizen, had been a resident at a temporary pandemic shelter we ran from June of 2020 through September of 2021. And it was at a hotel, and we were serving people over the age of 60 and people with high medical vulnerabilities. The whole goal was to keep them safe from the pandemic. But we also had tremendous housing outcomes in the what we call Project Haven. We served 232 people with 75% successful housing outcomes. When you have enough staff and you have enough housing vouchers, you can get people housed. So when I talk about system being under-resourced, we know what we need, and different models will have better success depending on your level of staffing, your housing vouchers, and also the model of service. Our adult shelter is what's called low barrier. It's very easy for people to get in. And most people stay 2 weeks or less. So a lot of people come and they just need emergency shelter. 51% of our people stay 2 weeks or less. 20-something% stay 3 days or less. So different model of service than what we're doing in Glendale, and that what we're going to be doing at the next slide that I want to tell you about. The Haven. So it's been a passion and a dream of ours for many years. And now we're starting to see it come to fruition, to have a separate place just for our aging adults or senior citizens who are experiencing homelessness. The 55 and older population are the fastest growing population of people becoming homeless. Many of them are homeless for the first time. So we now own a 4-story hotel that's in the process of being renovated. It's a unique model of care, non-congregate, people can have their own rooms, all services on site, closed campus model. I want to update folks on where we are in the renovations, because many folks on this call have been very supportive as we are undertaking a capital campaign on this property. And I want to call out to a couple of those folks. I want to thank the Langs, John and Linda. I saw them earlier on the call. They were some of our first donors, and they helped us get our elevator operational. So John and Linda, when you're in town, you can now come and ride the elevator. Thank you very much. Thank you also, David Bixby, for your support, and Lori Goldstein and others on this call. If I didn't notice you, thank you for the support you've provided. We'll talk more about the capital campaign in a minute. So renovations are underway. We did just run into a glitch with having to replace all of the sewer lines. That's about a $550,000 price tag. So we're raising money to be able to do that. We are looking at probably January, February, given the delay with the sewer line, before we can move in. We're still hopeful we can get a certificate of temporary occupancy for some parts of the property when it is complete, so we can move people into one building at a time. We have 4 buildings on the property. All the demo is done. Now we're going to start doing the beautification, but we don't have the sewer line done yet, and we have to sprinkler the building. So there's still some big efforts underway. We do plan to do more hard hat tours in the near future when it's safe to do so people can see the progress. Many of you have come out before and seen what it looked like before. So we want to do some midterm tours, and then, of course, when it's complete, do a big celebration. So next slide, please. So also part of our capital campaign that you'll hear more about from Leslie in a minute is our family shelter. So while the Haven senior location will be new, we've had a family shelter for over, probably 35 years. And every night we can take up to 150 family members. It's an apartment complex, 30 apartment units. We provide case management, housing support, and we've done a lot of renovations, and we still have renovations underway. We now have renovated the apartments. You can see the beautiful kitchens. We put in new floors. We did all of that with CARES Act funding support that we were able to obtain. We have a new playground thanks to Devin Booker, who's an awesome basketball player, and our lobby where we do the family intake is being renovated. We're still in need of some additional things, and we will need new furniture. In the middle of this, you can see what some of the new furniture looks like that we want to purchase. We have some opportunities for people who might be interested in sponsoring an apartment where we could get all the furnishings, put your name on the apartment, and Leslie will talk to you about that in a minute. We are also in the process of raising operating dollars for our empowerment center. If you look here, you see there's computers. We have a computer room, but we have some other rooms where we do training and support for families, counseling services, recreational activities, health and wellness workshops. And we are also part of our capital campaign hoping to be able to purchase the property. We currently are leasing this property, and we would like to be able to purchase it. So next slide. This is Bower Park, and this came about last year when the state of Arizona put out a request for competitive proposals to build a new model of housing, transitional housing and shelter for people with a serious mental illness. We competed for the grant with partner Copa Health, and we were jointly awarded the grant. So this is what it will look like when it's built. We haven't broken ground yet. This is going to be hopefully opening in 2024. The state of Arizona is paying for the building costs, and we'll invite you when groundbreaking day is scheduled. We're hoping it's any day now. We'll have a lot of naming opportunities on this property as well. And what's important to me is it's a new model. People with a serious mental illness, I'll just say SMI, they do not fare well in mass shelters with 600 other people. They'll tell us they're fearful of coming in, they're not comfortable, and they need more support than we can provide when we have 600 people who are just providing basic services to. It's not the right level of care. It's not the right level of care, candidly, for seniors, which is why we are starting to specialize and deliver different services to our seniors. We had several people in their 90s stay at our 600-bed shelter last year, and a lot of people in their 70s and 80s. So similarly, seniors, people with an SMI, highly vulnerable people need specialized services to have the best outcomes. Part of what we've been doing also at CASS is getting licensed, and we are now licensed as a Medicaid agency. Under our license, we'll be able to provide counseling and support and care coordination. We're not going to be providing the medical support. We're not a paneled clinic, but we'll be able to do the care coordination with those clinics. And we already do that kind of work. But what's great about this now, once we are fully up and running, we'll be able to bill for some of our services. And this is really the way of the future for emergency shelter. It's something new, but it's really important for us to capture revenues where we can through Medicaid, so we continue to diversify our resources as we build more specialized services and supports. Lastly, I'll say about this model, you can see on the bottom left, the room, there'll be tables there. We're going to be doing a lot of workshops and support similarly at the Haven. and more of the therapeutic kind of model. I think for too long, our emergency shelter system has really just been looking at it, have people stay with you, get them out as quickly as possible, which we do want to do that. But while you have people with you, provide the therapeutic supports that you can, even if you have a large amount of people, and do everything you can to help them move on. Because the reality is, if you don't, many of them keep coming back into the system. So how do we break those cycles? And I believe we do it with new, more specialized models of care, candidly smaller housing and shelter models as well. So I will pause there because I believe we have a video. And then I think Leslie's going to talk to you, and then I think we're going to take questions.
For almost the last 40 years, CASS has been proud to be a partner with our community and with our government agencies and many private sector supporters to build the capacity to better serve the growing homeless community. As Arizona's largest emergency shelter provider, our goal is to help people take the first step and get off the streets. How do you think families are impacted by homelessness?
See, that's where I get particularly connected to it, because here's how I look at it. So now we're in Arizona, which has one of the nation's worst homelessness crises. I imagine myself being homeless. It's 124 degrees outside, maybe 130 on the pavement. And there I am out there trying to survive, just surviving. I need to get food. I need to get shelter. I need to get water, or I will die.
I was taking care of my mother who had cancer and she passed away. I wasn't on her lease. And so where we were living, they were like, you can't stay here, you have to go. We were going from friends to cars, to friends to van, to friends to van, friends to van.
At home, my daughter was abusive to me. She, hit me and pushed me down. And that was a good reason for me to get out before it got any more. So I had just started a job. My son Isaiah, he was on his way home and he got hit by a car. It was a hit and run. He was lucky to be alive because it said he either should have been dead or in a coma. And I was just thankful that she was alive. It sent me back on the job. I lost the assignment that I had, which I didn't. To me, it wasn't as important as being there for my son. I was scared that I was going to lose him. I'm hoping that I'm able to, to be able to get housing. The reason why I agreed to be the co-chair is because I am passionate about people living with serious mental illness or substance use disorders.
I wanted to get involved with CASS because in healthcare, we see the importance of housing for our patient population. Housing is healthcare. I think that we can do better by our unsheltered population here in Phoenix.
Once you're in here, and with the help, the services that were provided to them, there was such an opportunity to finally actually break out. And I could see it in the faces of the people that were around, that there was so much hope that they were going to do it. And I felt that inside and realized this is a way out, because the goal is not to feed or house people. It's to help them so they could feed and house themselves in the future. And I felt that with CASS, especially once we visited that particular shelter.
We got into CASS, and so that's been like the most gigantic weight lifted off my shoulders, just not having to worry about where we're gonna sleep. My kids, I kind of just put everything into them.
I packed all my stuff up and I went there, and it was so nice. It was peaceful. It's changed me as a person, because when you have the chance to talk to people who are homeless, whether it's chronically homeless for the first time, you realize the suffering and the humanity of it all.
In the end, it's our community. We live here. These people are part of us. We have to help them.
Since I started working with CASS and learning more about the organization, I think what is important to me and stays with me is about the value of each individual human being.
People are really friendly. I mean, the staff is good. They come in if you need them and stuff.
There are people who care, and there are people who will be there. And if you just, open yourself up and be willing to accept their help, you'll see that there are angels everywhere. It's so crazy. It's so crazy.
I think that reputation of caring for every single individual, regardless of where they are in their life, is an important one, and we fill that need.
The only place that I know to go is CASS, which is why I support CASS and why I'm asking others to support CASS as well.
So we have built housing and emergency shelter. And then in the last few years, we've really scaled up. We scaled up to 600 beds at our main adult shelter. Our family shelter has been renovated. We opened a navigation center in the city of Glendale in partnership with Glendale. And next, we're going to be opening the CASS Senior Haven, which is 170 beds in a non-congregate closed campus model. And then the year after, we're going to be opening up another 54 beds in transitional housing for people with a serious mental illness. Last year, we helped over 1,250 people get back into housing, or just as importantly, remain housed. It's really an honor and a privilege for us to be able to help them get back on their feet, get back into housing. And that's why we do what we do.
I never would have thought, that there are so many people who would just be so willing to help, and it's definitely amazing.
I think it's up to the rest of us to step in and advocate and provide the care and the housing that they need. No one gets better without a house.
If you want a new family, go to CASS. They're the best option. Totally. Really.
Thank you all. We had a couple little glitches there, but I think we're back. Leslie, are you going to talk a little bit about the overall campaign? We had a question about our capital campaign, and that I think we're going to answer next. So turning it over to Leslie.
Yes, and if there are any other questions, I saw one from Kyle, but any other questions, please put them in the chat and we'll get to those in a moment. Lisa will be able to answer those. But thank you for asking about what it is that we need for this campaign. The two programs that we are currently aggressively fundraising for, because we need to get these finished, is the Senior Haven and the Family Haven. As Lisa mentioned, the Senior Haven is currently under renovations, so there is nobody in it yet. The sooner we get this open, the sooner we can move our most vulnerable folks into this shelter. So the total project cost is $30 million, and currently we need a little over $8 million to get it completed. I wanted to just show you a few examples of naming opportunities. If you do want to put the name of a loved one, your family, yourself, your company, whatever that looks like, those opportunities are there at the Senior Haven. And we also have larger opportunities going up to 3.5 million at that location. And those will be some of the buildings. We have several buildings on site. And moving over to the Family Haven, that project total is about 12 million. The renovations are underway, but we need more. We need help completing that. We really, really need to get that Family Empowerment Center up and running. And in addition to some other renovations that need to be complete, we're going to need about 9.3 million to complete that. And there are also naming opportunities there. And I'd like to say thank you to David Bixby, because you have an apartment named after you there. And I'm just waiting for the sign to come so we can put it up. So thank you for that wonderful gift. We're going to be doing that in honor of you for your wonderful support. But we have many more. I mean, there's many apartments available, and those gifts can also be paid over 3 years if you'd like. So please do let us know how we can continue the conversation with you around this. And if you'd like me to send you our booklets, we've got a couple of booklets that I can email to you on the campaign. Please do let me know. You can put your email or your name in the chat, and I'll make sure that you get that so that you've got that. And I'm hoping to follow up with folks with phone calls and emails so we can talk further about that. And also right in the middle of your screen there is a QR code. If you scan that with your phone, up pops the page where you can go ahead and make a donation if you're ready to give that gift today. That's an option. So thank you all for listening. And I want to go to questions now. Are you ready for questions, Lisa?
Yeah, I do want to just say a couple of other things that I meant to cover. So our main campaign effort is focused right now on the Haven and the family shelter. We are also going to be providing naming opportunities and will need support for Bower Park And in consultation with our campaign chairs, Lori Goldstein, who was in the video and is not only an expert, she is passionate about meeting the mental health needs of people, whether they're experiencing homelessness or in need. So we're going to be talking with Lori and David Bixby about adding on to our capital campaign to look at Bower Park and what we can do there, and also how we transform our service delivery model to provide more of the mental health support people need. The second thing I wanted to say, how important faith partnerships are, and I saw Pastor Jacobson on the call. I think that is a real opportunity as we go forward as a state and in our communities. The faith community does so much already, and they even want to do more. The church I go to, they feed people lunch. They also are a cooling station. They do not receive government support for that. But just imagine if we were able to come alongside and provide case management and housing navigation resources. There are so many people, and our numbers keep going up. We've got to get resourceful on how we address this together. So I will jump into questions. And then also if people want to share certain things too, that's good too. It doesn't have to be all questions. I do want to answer Kyle's question, an excellent question, Kyle, about if there's about 1,000 people in being moved out of the zone, and there's going to be about 250 camping spaces nearby, where do the majority of them go? That is the problem. Now, there are more shelter beds coming online. There have been more opened over the last year, but the numbers keep growing. Reality-wise, they are moving to other places where it is okay to camp. So we're seeing movement for the ones who aren't taking services, as the city is clearing block by block, and a high percentage are taking services, but others are just moving to other locations. So it doesn't solve it, and it sort of kicks the can down the road for some people. We have to add more housing and shelter. The state of Arizona, through the legislature, did appropriate a large amount of money for housing this last session, 150 million. They also appropriated 60 million for homelessness. That was one I had been personally advocating for, because we can't just have housing that takes a couple of years to build without addressing the homeless crisis in fast action. So they are putting those funds out to RFP, and hopefully we'll have them out before the end of the year. One of the best things we can do is open properties quickly, such as hotels, which we did in the pandemic. And we may be opening up somewhere for 6 months as well, just trying to get all those pieces together. We may see more of those open. That will help with some of those people who are coming out of the zone. There's some other innovations. I mentioned churches as partners in the city of Phoenix. By ordinance, churches are allowed to put 12 units of housing or house 12 people, pocket shelters, just by right under the ordinances. So I think we're going to see that starting to happen. Of course, there have to be resources to support that on an ongoing basis. And then at the city of Phoenix, and also at the state level, there's the term granny homes, and it's EDUs, I think, dwelling or UDEs, universal dwelling units, something like that, where people can put something in their backyard, small home, and someone can live there. We think that could be part of the solution. The question is, how quickly, and are we doing enough? I always ask that question. Your second part of the question, Kyle, is about the ACLU, and are people who are camping being forced to move, also losing their property as per the recent ACLU suit. They are not losing their property, and if they were before, they no longer are. That is still in litigation, but Phoenix has set up a system where people's items are being preserved and not thrown away. So I'm hopeful that Phoenix can resolve that lawsuit soon, and then continue to deal with the other lawsuit by the neighbors. The good news of the neighbor lawsuit is it's causing a lot of positive action, and I think it's part of the reason maybe our state was prompted to invest more money into solutions. So let me see, Kyle, if you have some other related or follow up from that, or anybody.
Lori's got a good question that came in. Can vacant strip malls
Wait,
or
Leslie,
Yeah.
Kyle was about to speak, so let him
Oh,
go.
sorry,
Thank
Kyle.
I just said that covered it.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Basically, I mean, I guess the judge's view is that, you know, even though they can't solve the problem in any near time frame, they feel compelled to kick it to some other place. And it was not CASS's decision to try to get in there and try to oppose that move. You just tried to help out where you can.
You know, homelessness, I believe, has been politicized in a lot of ways too. And everybody's taking, who's in this arena, and the cities and others are taking a lot of heat, and there's a lot of pressure, as there should be, because people are quite literally losing their lives. And it's a community problem. It's a problem for the neighbors and the businesses who are being hurt. And it's a humanitarian crisis for those impacted. Going to Lori's question now, can vacant strip malls or office buildings be utilized? I think they could, if there's a willingness to allow that. I think all options need to be on the table. Then you just have to get the zoning to be able to use those spaces. So yes, if you know of locations, CASS has been working on having additional locations since 2019. And the pandemic accelerated the need for more locations and brought a lot of attention to the challenge of people who are unhoused. How does an unhoused person stay indoors and isolated during a pandemic? They don't. So that gave us the ability to get a hotel, and other cities and states across the nation did the same thing. But strip malls and office buildings ought to be utilized and considered. Yes. And thank you for the comment, Pastor Jacobson. Grace Lutheran Church in Glendale's 2 blocks from your location. Oh, we're glad there's been a noticeable improvement in Glendale with the reduction in unsheltered, and would love to meet with you and find ways we can partner even more. What other ideas do people want to share, or questions? Things we can learn? See, who can I call on? There's no need to have to weigh in, but Pastor Jacobson, were you about to speak?
Yeah, I was going to say something. We as a church struggle with what is helpful and what is not. So people here want to just give away everything, whatever people need, and others like, oh, you're not really helping, you're enabling. And so currently we're just walking people to your location when they come to our front door. Is there anything else that we could do that is helpful for the hungry and the homeless?
Well, yes, I think feeding people, providing water are probably things that you already do.
Yeah.
Spiritual support is absolutely critical. Walking them to our door is good too. I think we could develop more resources through a deeper conversation. Like, what could we do? Are there other churches besides Grace Lutheran that are also doing this? How could we leverage our resources? Something I've talked to the city of Glendale staff about, Jean Moreno over there, who you might know. They would really like to see shelter options and maybe have churches be able to provide nighttime shelter, but that's probably going to take some staffing support, and maybe that's something we could look at doing together. That's another way that people can be off the streets during the evenings. And I know from talking to Jean, they would like to see more of the low-income housing or shelter in that community. So if you have ideas, we'd love to talk to you. Currently, the West Valley is lacking, doesn't have an emergency homeless shelter. It's going to be hard to bring that to any community. So what may work is to bring in more sort of transitional type of housing for seniors, people with disabilities, veterans, because we do need neighborhood support for everything we're going to be doing. So you have to face the political reality of when you're trying to open something in a community. What other things are you doing out of Grace Lutheran right now? Are you looking to put any housing on your property?
We are not looking at that right now. I think just, more or less, we're looking to provide people with food and water, like you had said.
It's good.
Lisa, I'll jump in on that.
Hi,
first
Mo.
then. Hey, just a couple of thoughts that have come to mind that I think I'd share first is that, I think forever this has been a Phoenix problem. And I think that we all have to buck up and realize that this is an Arizona problem. And that we can't expect to do all the lift in Phoenix or its immediate environments that everybody's going. And I'm not criticizing all, because there's many cities that support that, but we all know that there are many cities that do not. And you and those around the shelter are perfectly aware of the number of officers whose police cars roll up to CASS who have names on the side and they don't say the city of Phoenix.
Yep, absolutely.
So I think that's one thing that if we're going to be advocates, when we talk about advocacy, that's one of the things that we all have an opportunity to make a serious difference in. I also want to address the issue that was just raised about strip centers and office buildings becoming available for new uses. I frankly think that's harder than not, mostly because of land use issues and neighborhood issues and perceived political issues and all. But I do think that your question to the pastor about, are you thinking about doing housing on your property? I think that's a serious question that many people are talking about in the world of public institutions like churches, schools, retail centers, even city properties that have leftover properties available and are sitting idle and unused. And those properties that could be affordable housing, or I call it approachable housing, or shelter type housing, or care type housing, without any problem. Some have zoning that already exists, others do not. But one of the things that we're going to do, at least I hope to do in the Phoenix General Plan, which I chair and we will be taking to the public next year, would allow churches, schools, retail centers, large property owners who have existing land to make it available for housing purposes by right, especially if you're on a major street. I think that would change things easily, because you would avoid the multitude of problems of zoning and land use change and make it about need versus land use maps.
Wow.
So keep your eyes on that.
Thank you, Mo. I think I would love to do another town hall and just have that two-part conversation, really, advocacy, as well as how do we find the locations in the land. I don't know if you're looking at doing any sort of legislative fixes that are needed to have that by right option.
Well, Lisa, and when we do the general plan, and other cities have general plans, Scottsdale did theirs not that long ago.
Mhm.
We're updating for 2025, but we won't be in the business of creating policy. We'll be in the business of creating direction and meaning, and challenging our political leaders who are elected to create policy to do something with that. I think we're going to have a very big positive response with that, not just in Phoenix, but in other cities when they see us taking the lead in that regard. But we all are aware of schools and retail centers that have leftover lots that are going unused. The other thing that I think that we're going to encourage, and it's a little bit wilder, is that not just public buildings like City of Phoenix garages, but city projects and private projects have an opportunity to think about housing as part of their delivery. For example, some of us are aware of the I think it's the Costco distribution center on the west side, very far west side, that is going to have housing on the second and third floor.
I didn't know
You know,
that.
There's no reason why buildings can't be multi-purposed, or I would like to use the word upholstered, to create, and even if it's 20 apartments, it's 20 apartments we don't have and 20 families that aren't housed. And I think that we do such a job pushing the industrial uses and the other uses, that maybe there's a way that you think about those things, and that's politics, but we can certainly set the table for that, and see if it can't make a difference.
Thank you, Mo, for being one of the champions who continues to put so much time into this. CAFCO Homes, and we have someone on our board who also works with CAFCO, Senator Flavio Bravo. They have a program called Homes for Our Own, and CAFCO builds affordable modular housing, but they're working on their employees through a program they've created to be able to have homes. So there's all kinds of, like, I think, creative things happening. And I'm really glad that you're chairing the Phoenix General Plan, because it will make a huge difference. Any other thoughts, creative ideas people want to share?
Lori had a couple.
Oh,
things
Lori.
she put in the chat. Yeah.
Would Native American reservations consider affordable housing options on vacant land? I heard there are conversations with BLM properties. I don't know the status of that, but I do believe that there have been some conversations ASU is involved in. I don't know if anyone else here knows what's going on with that. Maybe Mo knows.
I'm not aware of Native American properties, because the land use issues are different in terms of ownership and things like that. But it does raise an important question. There are homeless concerns all across our community, not just in big cities, but
Yes.
Native American populations as well, and the issues of that we all know, many issues that surround those communities. And there's certainly plenty of land and opportunity and potentially funded opportunities.
Something
do
to
that.
explore. Let me address Jennifer's question and then go back to the other comment Lori Goldstein made. How are you coordinating with health and behavioral health care partners to ensure residents are getting mental health and addiction treatment to support long-term success in housing? So we have always coordinated with health and behavioral health care partners since our inception. Sometimes those partners change. Circle the City, I think they're going into their 13th or 14th year, are a primary partner. Their exclusive population is serving the homeless with medical care and some behavioral health care. So we wrap services around people, and everything we do, they're involved in. Similarly, Community Bridges is a behavioral health care partner. We case manage clients who might also be case managed there, have a behavioral health plan. So we do coordination of care, addiction treatment. There are programs and substance abuse, addiction, mental health treatment programs we refer to. But the supporting of the long-term success in housing, I don't think we have enough places for that long-term housing success. I think we have to ask, you're asking like critical questions that we need to dive more deeply to figure out. Do we have what we need to meet the need? No. What do we need to do next to better meet the need? Funding from the state could be allocated to that. Our access, Medicaid agency, if a person has a serious mental illness, there's a lot of housing support for them, but what about people who have maybe an addiction or a behavioral health issue that doesn't rise to that level? I don't have the answer. I just know we need to keep asking the question. And our new program, the Bower Park property, where we have 50 to 54 people that will stay in transitional housing with a serious mental illness, is a unique model. It's not a 72-hour lockdown model. It's not an addiction treatment. It's get them in the door and stabilize and wrap the services around them. There's probably more freedom in that model. And I think that could be a model of the future for getting folks off the streets to deal with some of this that's not being dealt with. But you are asking probably the most difficult question, because our mental health services a lot of people are falling through the gaps. Lori Goldstein is an expert in that area too. Just FYI, if that's something you wanted to connect with her. Okay, Amber, so Bureau of Land Management, ASU, anything you wanted to add there?
Lisa, one quick thing
Sure.
on SMI and housing, even though the Arnold Disarn settlement, sorry, I'm running to an airport, states that housing is part of what they should get, there's an over 5,000 person wait list of people with serious mental illness waiting for affordable, appropriate housing. So
I thank you.
there's that.
Just in Arizona, 5,000 people.
In Maricopa,
Oh, in Maricopa County.
I think. Well, I'm not sure. I know in Arizona.
That's a lot. That's a lot. We don't have the housing. And for someone with a serious mental illness, they may do best in permanent supported housing. And we know we need more units of permanent supported housing. I think with the Department of Housing, 150 million, I would speculate they'll put a percentage towards that. They're taking input, by the way, right now on where they should focus their dollars. But we have a lot of work to do. What other questions? Guy, did you have something? No, okay. David or anyone? I can,
To
go ahead.
Lori's question about the affordable housing on tribal nations. So Arizona Community Foundation, in partnership with the Maricopa Association of Governments, we do have a tribal affordable housing webinar series. And I think we do it like just semi-quarterly, so maybe 3 or 4 times a year. The next series is going to be sometime in November. I want to say Thursday, November 9th off the top of my head, but I hope I have that date correct. So yes, tribal nations do consider, or they look to fund affordable housing projects on vacant land. But what we've learned from our consultant, Serena, our tribal consultant, is that in Arizona, the challenges are numerous because each tribal nation is its own sovereign entity. So there are a lot of political structures, maybe constraints with funding, federal funding, et cetera, that have to be considered before a project is able to be launched. We do know that New Mexico tends to spearhead a lot of affordable housing projects on their reservations. Part of that is because they are a little bit more maybe politically adept in some ways that we are not yet. So Lori, if you're interested, can you send me your email address? I'd love to give you information about our series. I think we have the recordings. MAG has the recordings on their YouTube channel, and then I could always link you to information for our upcoming series. But we have speakers who work in the affordable housing space, specifically with tribal nations. They come on and they just discuss, their challenges, areas of opportunity, some of the projects that they've been able to develop on different tribal nations. So we do have information for you on that if you want to learn more.
Thank you. Who else? Comments, questions, insights? If not, I'm going to address briefly the comment Lori made. Lack of enforcement in San Francisco has resulted in a collapse of retail businesses. So what lies behind that is across the country, a lot of cities are not enforcing ordinances that say people can't camp in certain locations. And the city of Boise was sued when they were doing just that. The Martin v. Boise case ended up being in the federal courts at the Ninth Circuit level, and the court made a decision. You can't arrest people, which I agree, you don't arrest people for being homeless. You can't criminalize homelessness. It's different than saying you can't camp somewhere. It depends on sort of the consequences. Part of what the court said is if you have a place to offer people shelter to people, then you can do a certain level of enforcement. So there's still a lot of unopened questions, but the impact in San Francisco, and I've heard this too, that Lori is saying here, not enforcing where people camp is impacting retail business in San Francisco. So I think that may have been part of the reason the businesses in this immediate area, the zone, sued because they were seeing it impact their businesses. It doesn't make them non-caring human beings. Some people, think they're not caring because they've sued. They actually care a lot. So finding it's pushing the issue to the point where people, we have to open more locations. So I think that's the upside of that lawsuit is more people are in action. We're going to see more locations open. I'm hoping we continue to see more investment from the state now that a lot of the COVID funding is gone and expended, the money we used during COVID to deal with the crisis. So there's an upside to that. So what other thoughts, closing remarks, anything from our co-chairs? Lori may have gotten off here. I think she was in an airport, or David Bixby co-chairing our capital campaign. Nope, Lori's still there. Anybody else want to weigh in?
So Lisa, this is David.
Hi.
So I think the main point that we have to get, and Lori touched on this a little bit, is that thing I said at the kickoff, is that in many ways that if we don't get on top of this, one, we will spiral out of control, and we'll get into, as civic people who love our community will be very concerned about what happens to our overall community. And Mo correctly pointed out, this is not a Phoenix problem. If it ever was, it certainly isn't now. And the other thing is, it's sort of a humanitarian crisis, as you pointed out. It's corrosive to our souls to have to pull up to every freeway off ramp and deal with looking the other way, or worry that we're enabling if we don't look the other way. So I think and the other point I would just make, and it's the one I've made every time I get in the elevator and get unleashed, is that the genius of what CASS is doing and the reasons to support this campaign is that it is recognizing that this is not while it looks like a uniform homogeneous population, it is not. There are a lot of ways to become homeless, and just as there's a lot of different ways to become homeless, there have to be different strategies to get people off and into housing. And that's where the private sector, and CASS in particular, has excelled in developing these targeted strategies that we need to fund. Everybody, people just assume it's mentally ill, severely mentally ill, which need a separate strategy from people who simply ran out of money, or from elderly who got evicted when the rents were released and there was a fixed income. So, but the problem is not going to go away. It's not going to go away by itself. We have to be very conscious and deliberate, and make that we're proactive in addressing it. That's what this campaign is all about.
Well said, David. Thank you. Anyone else? Closing thoughts, and I'll wrap it up here. All right. I'm wearing my CASS Closer to Home campaign pin if you would like one. If you're interested in donating, you can talk to Leslie or myself, or if you know someone who might be interested in being involved as a volunteer, making a contribution, lending their voice to advocacy and solutions. There are lots of ways to get involved. And then we will follow up with Grace Lutheran out in Glendale, and you know how to reach us. Thank you again for your time and your attention. We're gonna get back to serving people. This year, we anticipate we'll serve about 6,900 people. Our numbers, every year, our service numbers keep going up. And that's because the demand is there, but we couldn't do it without you. So thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
Bye.
Bye-bye.